Thank you so much for staying with us. Welcome back. Don't forget to be part of the conversation by tweeting at us using the hashtag politics today to these handles at CTV Politics and at Sheung Okin. Send an email to politicstoday@channelstv.com. Well, let's advance the conversation now. You know what we've been talking about. We are inquisitive to know what exactly is the cause of this violence that we see in Nigeria's election. And I have the privilege of hosting now the chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, joining me in the studio. Thank you so much, Prof.
Former.
Oh, former. I beg your pardon. Former chairman, National Human Rights Commission.
Happily former.
Interesting. Good to see you, Prof.
Thank you very much.
But, I mean, there's a big question we've been asking everybody. Why do politicians kill for votes?
I don't know. I've never been a politician. I don't have any intention of being one.
But you've been investigating issues of electoral violence and reasons why people have done that. You've headed so many committees. The last one we understand in River State.
Yes. There's a desperation to power in Nigeria that's troubling. And I don't think that the institutions are doing enough to curb it. And by institutions, I mean everything from the Supreme Court and the judiciary down to the police and the politicians. I think all of us in some way or the other are complicit. I think the jurisprudence of the Supreme Court, with all due respect to the court, I recognize that the court is final in all its decision, is irresponsible. And this is with all due deference to the Supreme Court. I think the decisions are final. But look, this country spent a heck of a lot of money, okay? To deploy the card readers, to acquire that technology. And the card readers are not unlawful, okay? The card readers are supported by the guidelines of INEC, which, by the way, have authority in the Electoral Act. You can't over-literalize the Electoral Act and say, oh, well, unless it is written in black and white in the Electoral Act, it is not there. Because the money that we deployed itself was spent under what? Law. It was spent under the Appropriation Act. And at the level of the Supreme Court, you've got to be able to rationalize the policy logically. And I say this as a citizen, you know, I don't say this as a lawyer. As a citizen, the jurisprudence of our electoral dispute resolution has progressively grown more irresponsible. And we've got to the point now where everybody has decided the way to sort elections out is do it yourself. Vigilantism. Citizens, politicians, institutions, everybody has been given reason to sort out elections through vigilantism. And I think we've got to step back, everybody, and decide to begin to do things the right way.
Prof, if you see, those are pictures from River State specifically, and alarming. China's television has been on the receiving end of violence during elections. We've had our equipments being vandalized. We have staff being attacked during the election because these violent people do not even know the extent and the boundaries of their actions. Some of the times you can see that people are agitated. But one will be asking the question, why is River State very volatile at elections?
You see, historically, the elections in Nigeria have been won in two places. At the federal level, you win elections in two places. Yeah, you know, in other parts of the world, you win elections where people reside. In Nigeria, historically, since, at least to my knowledge, since we began the presidential system in '79, you get the most votes from places where people don't reside. From places where you've got either sand in the neo-Sahelian parts of Nigeria or places where you've got water in the Niger Delta. And that's because those are the places from which you can manufacture demographics and participation figures that are entirely unverifiable. So you go to the creeks or you go to one place lost on the map in the Sahel and you write up results. And if the electoral officials don't agree to write up the results, they will not return. In between the point of voting and collation, something could happen to them. So the easiest thing for you is to sign off on whatever is presented to you, and you go. And so what's happened, to be fair, to River State did not start today. It didn't start with the last election or the war before that. you've got to go back a long way to understand the way elections have been organized in the creeks. The only thing that's changed is the deployment of more serious violence. And the violence in Rivers, for instance, has been rising for a long time, since President General Abacha, with, God bless his soul, but General Abacha introduced more guns into Rivers State politics than any other person. And since then, there's been a huge trade in those guns, and the guns have been rising, and now the Nigerian state is in a place where it cannot preclude people who deploy guns and violence in elections in the creeks. That essentially is where we are. And so in a place like Rivers State, violence pays, okay? Now, violence is an occupation, it's a business. People sell it to different people. They sell it to the oil companies, they sell it to the politicians, they sell it to government, they sell it to enemies, they sell it to everybody. During the political season, you sell it to politicians across the party spectrum. All the parties buy violence in Rivers State. You cannot go and say, oh, this is the only party that buys violence. That's not true. And the kids understand that during the political season, the price of violence is higher because the politicians are more desperate. So they put a premium on the price, and the politicians are willing to pay, and that exactly is what happens. The law enforcement agencies are overwhelmed, and when you say deploy the security agencies, you remember I had a conversation with you, and I said we needed to use the army, and the politicians came after me then. I still think you cannot do elections with any degree of safety and security in Rivers State without deploying the military. It will not work.
All right. Very dangerous scenario playing out there, and one is wondering what exactly will happen during the rerun election in another few days. Well, let's bring the police into this conversation. Joining me is the Commissioner of Police at the Operations Office at the headquarters, Force Headquarters in Abuja, Mr. David Folawiyo. Many thanks for coming on the program. You've heard the scenario Prof has played out. How sensitive the terrain there in Rivers State. But tell me, how prepared are you considering what happened in Bayelsa State?
Good evening. Thank you. I want you to believe that we are comfortable. We are not worried. We are fully prepared. Is there anything you particularly...
Yeah, that is comforting to know that you are prepared and you are comfortable. But Nigerians may not be comfortable with one thing. The spate of violence that we have seen in election in places that have similar terrain as Rivers State. Are you prepared for that particular terrain? That's the big question here.